It's funny, the things you remember when your world shatters. Not the grand moments, not the big speeches, but the small, mundane details. The way the afternoon sun used to slant across my drafting table in my Charleston studio, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a sense of peace settling over me. The quiet hum of the AC, the scent of fresh coffee, the faint salt tang carried on the breeze from the harbor. These were the anchors of my life, the rhythm of a reality I cherished, a reality I now know was nothing more than a meticulously crafted illusion. I was David Miller, 42, an architect. Not just any architect, I suppose. My designs were known for their meticulous detail, their unwavering integrity. I built things to last, structures that stood firm against the passage of time and the whims of changing tastes. And I built my life much the same way. My wife, Emily, and my best friend, Mark, they were the pillars, the bedrock. More than friends, more than family, they were my constants. Or so I believed. Life felt full, vibrant. My firm had just landed the biggest public project of my career, a multi-million-dollar civic center, a landmark development that would reshape a significant part of Charleston. It was a behemoth, consuming my thoughts, my waking hours, often my dreams. But it was my dream, too. A legacy. I threw myself into it, driven by a passion that felt boundless, fueled by what I thought was their unwavering support. Emily, my beautiful, elegant Emily, always ready with a comforting word, a warm meal, a quiet evening by the fire. And Mark, my brother from another mother, always there for a beer, a sounding board, a laugh that could cut through any stress. I was a man blessed, a man living his purpose. How could anything be wrong? Looking back, the foundations of my life started cracking long before I noticed. Emily and I had met in college, two bright-eyed idealists. She studied literature, I architecture. We were different, yes, but complementary. She softened my edges, I grounded her dreams. Our early years were a whirlwind of shared ambitions, small victories, and the comfort of building a future together. She understood my passion for design, or so I thought. She'd often say my work was beautifully consuming, a phrase I took as admiration. She'd joke about being an architecture widow, but it was always with a smile, a light-hearted touch. I never imagined that beneath that smile, a seed of resentment was being carefully watered. Mark, my best friend since childhood, was the jovial counterpoint to my more serious nature. He was an entrepreneur, always dabbling in various ventures, none quite as stable or consuming as my architectural career. We were inseparable, two halves of a whole. He was the only person who truly understood the pressures of my work, the demands of the firm. He'd often tell me, "David, you work too hard. You deserve to relax, enjoy what you've built." I interpreted this as concern, a loving nudge from a friend who wanted the best for me. Now, I hear the echo of those words, tainted, hollow. I realize it wasn't concern. It was a prelude, a subtle conditioning. There were whispers, sometimes. Little things. Emily would occasionally make a barbed comment disguised as a playful jab about my monastic dedication to my work, especially when I had to miss an evening out with friends. Mark would sometimes subtly undermine a peer's achievements, saying things like, "He got lucky, David. Not everyone puts in the grueling hours you do." At the time, I saw it as him defending me, recognizing my effort. But now I wonder if it was him sowing a quiet cynicism, an echo of their shared disdain. And sometimes, Emily and Mark would exchange a look, a brief, silent communication across the room, a secret smile that didn't involve me. I'd brush it off, thinking they shared some inside joke, a camaraderie I was happy they had. It never occurred to me that I was the subject of their shared amusement, or worse, their shared conspiracy. The red flags were there, waving gently in the periphery of my blissful ignorance, and I, in my unwavering trust, simply admired their vibrant color, blind to their warning. The Civic Center project began its ascent, and with it, the pressure mounted. Long nights in the studio became routine. Early mornings were spent reviewing schematics, coordinating with engineers, battling bureaucratic red tape. My life became a relentless churn of deadlines and decisions. And then, the first cracks appeared in the facade of my carefully constructed world. It started subtly. A misfiled document here, a minor delay in a material shipment there. Nothing catastrophic, just annoying ripples in the smooth flow of a massive undertaking. I'd chalk it up to the sheer scale of the project, the inevitable hiccups. Big projects, big problems, I'd tell myself, a mantra I'd learned early in my career. But then the ripples grew into waves. A critical structural drawing went missing just before a review meeting. A crucial bid proposal was submitted an hour late, costing us a vital component supplier. These weren't just hiccups. These felt deliberate. I remember one particularly grueling week. We were behind schedule. A key subcontractor had mysteriously pulled out, citing unforeseen circumstances, and the city council was breathing down my neck. I came home, utterly defeated, the weight of the project pressing down on my chest like a physical burden. Emily was there, as always. She would rub my shoulders, her touch light and comforting. She'd say, "David, you're burning yourself out. This project is consuming you. Is it really worth it?" Her words, cloaked in concern, were a balm to my frayed nerves, but also a subtle erosion of my resolve. She'd make me chamomile tea, encourage me to take a long bath, distracting me from the details, from the urgent need to find solutions. Mark was equally present. He'd drop by the studio late at night with a six-pack, a sympathetic ear. He'd listen to my frustrations, nodding solemnly. He often said, "It sounds like someone in your team isn't pulling their weight, David. Or maybe the rival firm is playing dirty." He planted seeds of doubt, shifted blame, but always framed it as a brotherly concern for my well-being, an astute observation from an outsider looking in. He'd suggest I delegate more to a particular junior architect, someone I'd already noticed seemed less reliable than others, subtly pushing me towards decisions that would further destabilize things. I found myself increasingly dependent on their emotional support. My colleagues were focused on solutions. My family, my parents, my sister, were too far removed from the specifics to offer practical advice. Emily and Mark were my confidants, my safe harbor. They were the only ones who truly understood what I was going through. My chest would tighten every time a new problem arose, a familiar knot forming in my stomach. I'd catch myself grinding my teeth at night, my jaw sore in the morning. Sleep became a precious commodity, haunted by half-formed solutions and the growing anxiety that I was somehow losing my grip. I trusted them implicitly, leaning on them harder as the ground beneath me grew shakier, never realizing they were the ones loosening the soil. The destabilization continued, escalating with terrifying precision. Missing files turned into altered schematics. Late bids turned into outright sabotaged vendor contracts. The rumors started circulating. David Miller was losing his edge. David Miller couldn't handle the pressure. My reputation, painstakingly built over 2 decades, began to fray at the edges. I remember one particularly damning incident. We were in the final stages of procuring a specialized, custom-fabricated FOD system, a signature element of the design. The deadline for the manufacturer's final quote was looming, and it was a critical path item. I had personally reviewed the specifications, confirmed everything with the team. But the manufacturer called, confused. They had received an earlier, incomplete set of specifications, causing a 2-week delay in their engineering assessment. 2 weeks. That could cripple the entire project schedule. I was beside myself, tracing every email, every file transfer. I knew I had sent the correct, final version. My assistant swore she'd confirmed it. But the manufacturer had dated proof of the incomplete specs. The paper trail, or rather, the digital trail, pointed to an internal error on our side, specifically originating from a shared drive access I'd given to a limited number of senior team members. And to Mark, for consulting purposes. I was in a state of quiet panic. My meticulousness was my professional religion. How could I have made such a mistake? Emily found me late that night, hunched over my laptop, replaying the day's disaster. She came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my neck, her voice soft. "David, honey, you look exhausted. Maybe you just misremembered which version you sent. It happens. You're under immense pressure." Her words felt like a gentle poison. They soothed, yes, but they also planted a chilling doubt. Did I misremember? Was I really losing my mind? The incident was so specific, so contrary to my nature. But Emily's voice, so calm, so rational, seemed to make more sense than the frantic whisper of my own intuition. She made me question my memory, my competence, my very sanity. It was gaslighting, pure and insidious, and I swallowed it whole, believing it was love. Mark, of course, echoed her sentiments. He came over the next day, shaking his head in mock sympathy. Man, that's rough. Could be a simple oversight, David. You know, you're trying to hold so many plates in the air. Happens to the best of us. He then subtly steered the conversation towards the junior architect he'd previously mentioned, implying that perhaps the assistant had mistakenly used the wrong file on his behalf. It deflected attention, muddied the waters, and made me feel even more isolated in my own perceived incompetence. I became withdrawn, guarded. I started double and triple checking everything, but it only made me slower, more prone to minor errors, confirming Emily's narrative that I was overwhelmed. The world around me felt increasingly unreal, a funhouse mirror reflecting a distorted version of myself. My judgment, once sharp and unwavering, felt dulled, unreliable. I was adrift, clutching at the comforting hands of my wife and best friend, convinced they were my only true allies in a world that seemed determined to crush me. The project lumbered towards its critical final presentation. It was do or die. We had somehow managed to claw back some time, but the budget was stretched thin, the morale of my team was low, and I, personally, was a hollowed-out shell of my former self. My sleep was non-existent. My appetite had vanished. I existed on coffee and the anxious flutter in my stomach. I felt like a boxer in the final round, battered and bruised, but still standing, still determined to land one last punch. The day of the presentation arrived. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My palms were slick with sweat. Emily had given me a pep talk that morning, her eyes earnest, her hand squeezing mine. You've got this, David. You're the best. Just focus. Ignore the noise. Mark had called, wishing me luck, telling me to knock him dead. Their words were supposed to be fortifying. Instead, they felt like distant echoes, meaningless in the face of the monumental task ahead. Just before I was to head out the door for the final city council review, Mark called. Hey Dave, quick favor. My laptop's acting up, and I need to print something really fast for a meeting. Could you quickly grab the file from my computer at home and print it from yours? It's in a folder called BizDocs on my desktop. I'd run over, but I'm stuck in traffic. It was an odd request, but not entirely out of character for Mark. He was always a bit disorganized, and I was already going to be passing his street. I agreed, my mind already rehearsing my presentation. I walked into Mark's house, which he'd given me the code for years ago, a place I considered my second home. His home office was neat, for him. I sat at his desk, fired up his laptop. The screen flickered to life. I navigated to the BizDocs folder. As I clicked it open, my eyes snagged on something unusual in the folder list. Not a file, but an encrypted chat application shortcut I didn't recognize. Its icon was a subtle, nondescript symbol, easy to overlook. But something about it, a faint glow around the icon, a fleeting sense of déjà vu, made me pause. Mark wasn't exactly tech-savvy. Why would he use an encrypted app? My architect's eye for detail, the one Emily said was beautifully consuming, refused to let it go. My fingers, almost against my conscious will, clicked on the icon. It opened to a login screen. My heart began to pound, a frantic drum in my ears. A hunch, a cold, dread-filled certainty, began to curdle in my gut. I tried a common password Mark used for other things, his old college mascot, his birthday. Neither worked. But then, almost out of desperation, I tried something else. A shared joke from our younger days, a word we used to tease Emily. And it worked. The screen filled with a cascade of chat logs. My breath caught in my throat. The names at the top of the chat windows were Mark and M. My vision blurred, then sharpened with terrifying clarity. I scrolled, my fingers trembling, the blood draining from my face. Dates, times, messages. My eyes fixated on specific phrases. Asterisk, he's getting close to finishing the FOD design. I'll make sure the old specs accidentally get sent. Asterisk, asterisk, the city council is getting antsy. Good. He needs to feel the squeeze. Asterisk, asterisk, Emily, you need to keep him distracted. Tell him he's overworking. He trusts you. Asterisk, asterisk, the rival firm is ready to move once David's out. Their offer for our cut is solid. Asterisk, my world didn't just shatter, it exploded. Each word was a shard of glass. tearing through the fabric of my reality. The FOD specs, the city council pressure, Emily's comforting lies, Mark's brotherly advice. It all coalesced into a monstrous, sickening truth. They weren't my pillars. They were termites, hollowing me out from the inside. I felt a scream clawing at my throat, but no sound escaped. Only a choked gasp. My head swam. My hands flew to my face, pressing against my eyes as if to erase the horrifying images. The digital trail wasn't just proof. It was a confession, laid bare, irrefutable. My wife, the woman I cherished, the woman I'd built a life with, and my best friend, the brother of my heart, had systematically, meticulously dismantled my life, my career, my sanity, for money. A percentage of a rival firm's contract. I don't remember leaving Mark's house. I was on autopilot, a ghost navigating familiar streets. I drove home, the steering wheel slick beneath my clammy hands. The presentation, the civic center, it all faded into an unimportant, distant hum. There was only one thing left to do. I found Emily in the living room, reading, a serene expression on her face. Her domestic tranquility, once a source of comfort, now felt like a grotesque mockery. I stood in the doorway, the printout of the chat logs clutched in my trembling hand. My voice was a rasp, barely audible. Emily. I managed, the name tasting like ash on my tongue. What have you done? She looked up, her expression softening, that familiar mask of loving concern. David? Honey, what's wrong? You look awful. Is it the presentation? I threw the papers onto the coffee table between us. They fanned out, revealing their damning contents. Her eyes widened, a flicker of something dark, something I'd never seen before, crossing her face. The mask slipped. I found it, I said, my voice gaining a desperate strength. All of it. You and Mark. The sabotage. The rival firm. Everything. She stared at the papers, then at me. The beautiful, concerned wife dissolved before my eyes, replaced by a stranger. Her face hardened, her lips thinned. There was no apology, no remorse, no denial. Just a cold, utterly chilling admission. So, she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. You know, she paused, then continued, each word a hammer blow to my soul. Honestly, David, I was tired. Tired of being second to your buildings. Tired of your ambition, your endless work. Mark understood. He felt the same way about you. Always so focused, so righteous. We just wanted a different life. A comfortable one. This was the easiest way. The contempt in her voice was unmistakable, a venomous truth that ripped through the last vestiges of my hope. It wasn't about money alone. It was about her deep-seated resentment, her hatred of my passion, my very essence. She had hidden it for years, behind a veil of supposed love and support. And now, exposed, it was a gaping wound. The world went silent around me, yet a deafening roar erupted in my head. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto the floor, the papers scattered around me, each word a shard of the life I thought I had, piercing me. The air left my lungs. I tried to scream, but only a ragged, broken sound escaped. It was the sound of a man being dismembered, piece by agonizing piece. The immediate aftermath was a blur of raw, visceral pain. I lay on the living room floor, not moving, not crying, just existing as a hollowed-out shell. Emily, after her cold admission, had simply walked away, leaving me there. I didn't know how much time passed. An hour? A lifetime? Grief isn't just for the dead. It's for the living who lose everything. I had lost my wife, my best friend, my career, my sanity, my entire perceived reality. It was a death of every belief I held dear. The pain was physical, an ache in my bones, a vice crushing my chest. My breath was shallow, ragged. My limbs felt heavy, useless. The phone rang, probably my assistant, wondering why I hadn't shown up for the presentation. I stared at it, unmoving. The world outside, the world of deadlines and projects and public image, felt distant, irrelevant. Nothing mattered but this crushing, all-encompassing betrayal. But amidst the numbness, a flicker, a spark of something cold and hard and utterly decisive. It started as a faint whisper, then grew into a roar in the desolate landscape of my mind. They will not win. Not completely. They had stolen my peace, my trust, my joy, but they would not steal my integrity. I don't know where the strength came from, but I slowly, painstakingly, pushed myself up. My body protested, every muscle screaming. My head throbbed. I felt like a zombie, operating on pure, desperate instinct. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. Not about the divorce yet, but about the project. I told him everything, in a monotone voice that barely sounded like my own. I laid out the evidence, the screenshots, the timestamps. I couldn't go through with the presentation. My career was already compromised, the project likely doomed. I informed the city council of the corruption, of the sabotage, providing the digital evidence. It was a painful, humiliating admission, but it was necessary. I stepped away from my firm, not just from the project, but from the entity I had poured my life into. The financial losses would be immense, catastrophic even. My life savings, my future, all intertwined with the success of that project. But it was a price I was willing to pay to salvage the one thing they couldn't touch, my soul. Then came the calls. To Mark, a brief, utterly devoid of emotion conversation where I told him I knew, and that he was dead to me. His stammering, his pathetic attempts to deny, to explain, to plead, they were meaningless. The brother I had loved was gone, replaced by a phantom. And then, Ivor's papers. The final, agonizing severing of the tie with Emily. There were no grand arguments, no tearful recriminations, just a cold, legalistic tearing apart. The woman I had promised my life to had become a stranger, a betrayer, and there was nothing left to say. The weeks that followed were a descent into the deepest parts of myself. I moved out of the house, renting a small, anonymous apartment overlooking a quiet street, far from the harbor breezes that once brought me comfort. The investigation into the project moved forward, a slow-grinding machine of depositions and legalities. I went to therapy. Intense, brutal sessions where I unpacked years of subtle manipulations, of missed cues, of my own unwavering loyalty being weaponized against me. I felt like a child learning to walk again, but instead of physical steps, it was emotional ones, each one wobbly, uncertain. The grief was a constant companion, a heavy cloak I wore everywhere. Grief for the dream of a loving partnership, for the trust one had placed in those closest to me, for the man I thought I was. I felt exposed, vulnerable, stripped bare. I struggled to trust anyone, even myself. Every kind word felt suspect, every smile a potential deception. My mind replayed conversations, searching for hidden meanings, for the cracks I had missed. It was exhausting. Slowly, painstakingly, the therapy began to chip away at the raw pain. My therapist, a kind, observant woman named Dr. Eleanor Vance, guided me through the labyrinth of my emotions. She taught me to recognize the signs of manipulation, not just in others, but in the echoes of my own self-doubt. She helped me understand that my loyalty, my empathy, my very nature were not weaknesses, but strengths that had been exploited. One evening, months after the explosion, I found myself sitting on the floor of my empty new apartment, staring at a blank sketchpad. I hadn't drawn anything, designed anything, in what felt like an eternity. My hands, once so confident with a pencil, felt clumsy, hesitant. But then, a thought surfaced. Not a demand, not a deadline, but a quiet yearning. I picked up a pencil, and without conscious thought, my hand began to move. I sketched a small, elegant pavilion, open to the elements, strong yet welcoming. It wasn't for a client, not for profit, not for a project brief. It was for me. A structure of healing, of openness, of quiet strength. I drew for hours, the old familiar flow returning, but with a new lightness, a new purpose. It was a meditation, a way to rebuild, not buildings this time, but my inner landscape. Today, nearly 2 years later, I am not the man I was. The scars are there, deep and intricate, etched into the very core of my being. The trust one once gave so freely is gone, replaced by a cautious, discerning awareness. I still work as an architect, but on a smaller scale, with a select group of clients who value integrity above all else. I design for passion, for beauty, for the quiet satisfaction of creating something honest and enduring. Emily and Mark are ghosts in my life. I hear rumors sometimes. Their scheme failed to materialize as planned. The rival firm cut ties, their reputation also tarnished. They got some money, perhaps, but at the cost of everything else. It brings me no joy, only a quiet, resolute understanding of the cost of their choices. My friendships are fewer, but deeper. I have learned to cultivate relationships with fierce intentionality, valuing authenticity above all. I spend more time walking the beaches of Sullivan's Island, feeling the wind against my face, listening to the roar of the ocean, a sound that is honest, uncompromising. I am learning to forgive myself for my blindness, for my unwavering faith. I am alone, in a sense, but I am not lonely. I am free. Free from the silent partnership that sought to destroy me. Free from the illusion that held me captive. I am rebuilding, not just my life, but my trust within myself. And perhaps, one day, I will extend that trust to others again. But it will be earned, slowly, deliberately, on foundations built not of sand, but of truth. The world feels real now, in its beautiful, messy, sometimes painful authenticity. And that, I've learned, is the most precious design of all.